Okay, so once again, good day everyone. Okay, so it is important for us to know the risk management in developing project, no, even in project management, no. So risk management actually is the process of minimizing any potential problems that may negatively impact a project timetable, no. Risk is any unexpected event that might affect the people, processes, technology, and resources involved in a project. Unlike issues which are certain to happen, risks are events that could occur and you may not be able to tell when. Because of this uncertainty, project risk requires preparation in order to manage them efficiently. So what is risk management and project management? It is preparing for and handling obstacles and problems that may challenge the success of your project. Okay, to give us more details about the topic, let us all welcome Sir Santiago. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you po, Doc Marmelo. So again, good morning to sorry. Good morning to everyone. So I will be the presenter for the risk management. So let's proceed. In terms of the risk management, uh, we are just going to discuss some topics. So what is risk management? Why is it important to study or to apply or implement the risk management planning, the risk identification, the qualitative risk analysis, quantitative risk analysis, risk response planning, and the risk monitoring and control. So let's proceed. Since Doc Marmelo introduced the risk management, so let me allow to repeat it and then give some insights from my own perspective. So risk is an uncertain event that may have a positive or negative feedback or impact into the project or into the software. And risk management is the process of identifying and mitigating risk. So, katulad ng sinabi ni Doc Marmelo kanina, that risk management is an event that if it occurs, adversely affects the ability of a project to achieve its outcome objectives. And it is the process of identifying the risk or simply assessing what are the risks and taking steps to reduce that risk to an acceptable level. And for the software or system to be managed carefully and in terms of the success. So why is it important to study or to apply? So risk affects all aspects of your projects or our projects, including as well our budget, the schedule, the scope, the agreed level of quality, and even the software itself. So it also increased the probability of positive event in terms of dealings, not just the issue, but also the potential risk in the environment of the software, including the human itself. So it also reduces the occurrence of negative event that will impact the success or the goal of a certain software that will affect also the certain company or certain user in terms of using a software or applications. So in terms of risk management planning, uh, these are some of the risk management that needs to be planned for us to identify, analyze, prioritize, and treat, and also as well as monitoring the risk for us to become more successful. So in terms of risk management planning, it is a document, excuse me, that a project manager prepares to foresee or foretell the risk, estimate the impacts, and define responses to that certain risk. So these are the 5 steps of the risk management process that we need to understand. So the first one is identify the risk. So we need to identify the risk if it is a positive experience that the whole team can take part in and learn from. Kasi it's very important if that risk is a positive one or the negative side of the software. So after we identify the risk, we are now going to analyze it. So once the team or the project manager, as well as his or her team, identifies the possible problems, so it's time to be dig deeper, no? Or how likely are these risks to occur? And if they do occur, what will be the ramifications be during this process? The team, no, will estimate the probability and fallout of each risk to decide where to focus first. So factors such as potential financial loss to the organization or company, even the time loss, no, and severity of impact all play a part in accurately analyzing each risk. So by putting each risk under the microscope, kasi nga we are digging more deeper, so you'll also uncover any common issues across the project and further refine the risk management process for future project or for future references. So once we identify, analyze, and then we need to understand the risk, uh, what would be the first priority or the last priority. So when we begin the prioritization, we need to rank each risk by factoring in both its likelihood of happening and its potential effect on the project. So this step gives you a holistic view of the project at hand, and we can pinpoint where the team we must focus, no, in terms of that risk. So more importantly, no, it will help the team, no, identify workable solutions for each risk. So this way, the product itself is not just interrupted or delayed in significant ways during the treatment stage in terms of that risk. So once we already know what are the risks that needs to be prioritized or having a high priority and the least priority, so we are now going to treat the risk. So once the worst risk or the priority risk come to light, or dispatch your treatment plan, syempre. And while you can't anticipate every risk, the previous steps of your risk management process should have you set up for success. So starting with the highest priority risk first, so task the team with either solving or at least mitigating the risk so that it's no longer a threat to the project itself. So effectively treating and mitigating the risk also means using your treat resources efficiently without derailing the project in the meantime. So as time goes on and you build a larger database for past projects, for example, and their risk logs, so you can anticipate possible risks for a more proactive rather than reactive approach for more efficient treatment. And then once we treated the risk, so it's not perfect at all. So we need to monitor the risk itself if it is possibly going to appear again in the near future. So clear communication with the team, with the stakeholders, as well as the project managers is very essential when it comes to ongoing monitoring of potential threats or simply the risk. And while it may feel like herding cats sometimes, no, with your risk management process and its corresponding project risk register in place, keeping tabs on those moving targets become anything but risky business. Okay. So this is the example of risk management process or planning that I have researched coming from lucidchart.com. So once we establish the context, so we need to identify the risk and then analyze it and then evaluate. So merong nadagdag lang ng konti. So that's the part of the risk assessment. And then we are now going to treat and then monitor, and simply we review the whole process for future references, since the risk may possibly appear in the next uh, timeline or in the near future. So we can handle it rightfully. Okay. So in terms of the risk management planning, so which risk has more probability? This is just an additional. Which risk has more probability of affecting the project? And we do also SWOT analysis in terms of risk management planning. So in terms of SWOT analysis, I know everyone knows about SWOT. So I just going to say it for the benefits of everyone. So that's the strength, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and threats that we need to analyze. So this fundamental tool for strategic and risk management planning can help the team identify risk and blind spots in the operations. So when it comes to the information gathering naman, no, so since we are particularly in the risk. So we need to gather not just data, but as well as informations, and also no in not just in the software itself, but the whole community or the whole organizations. Kasi it may affect every single factor in terms of the software or the project management. So in terms of risk management planning, we need to check every single details, every single aspect. So in terms of checklist analysis naman, so this is a technique that can be used to identify and manage the risk. So the checklist is developed by listing items, procedures or steps, or simply the task, and is analyzed against criteria to determine if the procedure is completely corrected. And then for the assumption analysis, this is defined as the technique that explores the accuracy of assumptions and identifies risk to the project for inaccuracy, inconsistency, or incompleteness regarding the project management or the software itself. Okay? So in terms of the qualitative risk analysis, so it assesses impact and likelihood of the identified risk, and then probability and impact matrix. We do also risk categorization and risk urgency assessment. So in terms of qualitative risk analysis, it tends to be more likely subjective. So it focuses on identifying risk to measure both the likelihood of a specific risk in event occurring during the project life cycle and the impact it will have on the overall schedule should it hit. So the goal is to determine the severity of that risk. So results are then records in a risk assessment matrix or the probability and impact matrix or any other form, no, which is comes from a graphical report. So in order to communicate outstanding hazards to the stakeholders and to the project managers. So in terms of risk categorization or classifying potential risk into one of several categories, so it is the part of a comprehensive risk management program. Kasi yung categorizing the risk, it is not just internal. It is also external or simply strategic, can help a business in a number of ways, including helping to build strategies to avoid or minimize the impact of that risk. So in terms of the risk urgency assessment naman, so it is a project management process that reviews and determines the timing of actions that need to happen sooner than the other risk items. So since we prioritize the risk, okay, so what would be the uh, high priority risk that needs to address? So in terms of risk urgency assessment, we assess what would be the first thing that needs to be addressed in terms of the risk management. So the purpose of this particular type of risk assessment is that it identifies the near-term risk. Okay, so this is the simple diagram of the probability and impact matrix, or in the other layman's term, risk assessment matrix. So this is the example of a qualitative risk matrix. So let's proceed to the quantitative risk analysis. So in terms of quantitative risk analysis, we are going to gather data and then the probability distributions and some modeling techniques that we need to apply or we need to analyze or understand for us to analyze more further in terms of the effect of that kind of risk. So quantitative risk analysis uses verifiable data to analyze the effects of risk in terms of the cost overruns, scope creep, resource consumption, and schedule delays. So in layman's terms, quantitative risk analysis assigns a numerical value to extent the risk. And then for the risk response planning, so in terms of our response to the risk, so we need to eliminate threats before they happen. Okay? So this is the very good thing in terms of the risk response planning, because we eliminate the threats before they can happen or before it may happen. And then we decrease the impact of threat in terms of the software as well as in the stakeholders and the project management or project manager side. And also for the contingency plan or doing something if risk happens. And then God bless you. And then fallback plan also. So do something if contingency plans are not effective. So in terms of the risk response planning, we are just heading to the future while we are still in the present, because we already know that at some point in terms of risk management, there will be a possible risk or problems or issues that will occur, not just in the software, but also in every aspect of the organizations. Okay? So in terms of risk monitoring and control naman, so we have the risk assessment, risk audit, and the trend analysis. So in terms of risk reassessment of risk monitoring control, it is the scheduled regularly to identify new risk. So katulad nung sinabi kanina ni Doc Marmelo, that in terms of risk management, even once a week, once a month, or twice a month, we need to assess potential risks that will be possibly be in the software or be in an organization. As for us to control it right away and it will not affect severely in terms of the project management. And the risk audit, so we need to examine the effectiveness of the planned risk response. So in terms of our monitoring control, as we give the solution for that kind of risk, we need to identify, we need to make sure the effectiveness. Kasi in the near future, since our technology is rapidly growing, and also there's new types of other risk or kumbaga nakaka-affect in terms of our software or the organization, we need to examine and we need to assess the effectiveness if it is still effective in the near future. And then for the trend analysis, So we monitor overall project performance. So kumusta ba yung mga nagiging performance in terms of the risk management? If it is still applicable, effective, no? Nagagamit pa rin ba yung ating response or pag-control or the solution itself in terms of the risk management approach. So that would be the end of our of my presentation. So thank you everyone. God bless po.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for your comprehensive discussions. No. Again, luckily, no, it was a small asteroid, no, so well, all okay, no. Not so lucky that the risky business, no, what a while ago, no, our presenter mentioned, no, what is project risk exactly, no. So in the, I don't know if you're familiar with PMI, no. So an uncertain event or condition that has a positive or negative effect on project objectives. No, basically, no, risk is any unexpected event that can affect your project better or for worse. No, risk can affect anything, people, process, technology, and resources. No, we need to pay attention to some important distinctions. No, risks are not same as an issue. No, they can be positive risk in project management. No? So not every risk is negative or an issue. Issues are things you know you'll have to deal with. So you may even have an idea of what they'll pop up. No? And conversely, risks are events that might happen and you may not be able to tell when. No? They are slippery and it takes some serious preparation to manage them. So in project management, no, we could able actually to break down risk, no, into some elements. No, number one is the risk events. No, what might happen to affect your project, risk time frame. No, when it is likely to happen, the probability. No, what are the chances of it happen or happening. No, the impact. No, what's the expected outcome, and the factors. No, what events might be forewarned or trigger the risk event. No, so the first thing you'll want to do is prepare a risk assessment to get a better understanding of the kinds of risks you're facing and their possible consequences. No, number one, we need to identify potential risks. No, sit down and create a list of every possible risk and opportunity you can think of. No? If you only focus on the threats, you could miss out on the chance to deliver unexpected value to the customers or client. Ask your team to help your brainstorm during the project planning process, since they might see possibilities that you don't know. And of course, step two, determine probability. No, what are the odds of a certain risk will occur? It's a lot more likely that a key team members will be out for a week with the flu than develop total amnesia. No, rate its risk with high, medium, or low probability, and determine the impact. No, what would happen if each risk occur? What your final delivery date get pushed back? Would you go over budget? So create a business impact analysis to determine the risk of each potential issues and identify which risk have the biggest effect on your project's outcome, and rate them as high impact. Rate the rest of medium or low impact risk. No? Again, it is important for us to use by using a risk register to log and track risk. No? You can create separate registers for threats and opportunities if you wish. Include risk probability, impact, countermeasures, and others. So once you have a risk assessment in place, you're ready to actually start managing the risk, of which will be next installment in the discussions, of course, of some project risk. No? So again, once you completed your risk, you're ready to create your risk management response plan. No, using appropriate risk management tools. No, we need to take note that risk management isn't something you check off your project to-do list. It's an ongoing process. No, so how will be able to manage risk in a project? Number one, determine your risk tolerance. No, how much risk can you take on before you consider abandoning the project? No, and this is essential conversation to have with your stakeholders. No? Their success is online too. No? There are a lot of issues to discuss. Do they want to be informed when risk happen, or will it depend on the level of impact? If certain risk occurs that could derail the project, do they want to be consulted first, or do you have the authority to act right away? Make sure everyone knows the plan of attack and agrees on the strategy, because our stakeholders conflict is one risk you can counteract, no, with open communication. Step 2, you need to decide which risk to manage. No? Once you determine the project's risk tolerance level, you can start, no, sabi nga ni sir, no, you can start to identify which risks are worth your time and attention. Even if it has risk as a high probability of occurring, its impact is small. Say it would at, let's say, add $200 to your project cost, and your budget is $50 million, you may choose to ignore it if it is counteracting the risk in an efficient use of your time or security. So we need to identify, of course, the impact, no, either very low, medium, high, or very high, or very high, medium, low, or very low. Okay, so we need to pay attention to that the quadrant, no, as what I mentioned earlier, no, and we need to identify project risk triggers. No? What cues might indicate a particular risk is imminent. No? If someone in the office start sneezing and coughing, that could be a trigger. Your team is about to get hit with the flow bug. Establish rules and responsibilities of for monitoring triggers among your team, and determine what steps should be taken if one pops up. Okay? Create an action plan. So what can be done to reduce the probability of risk occurring or minimize its negative impact? No? So if a risk occurs, what the most effective response? So what will your team do, and who responsible for what? Make sure you've thought each per piece, no, through, and everyone on your team knows the plan. Then after that, of course, evaluate. After your project wraps up, step back and consider which part of your strategy were successful. How effective were your trigger in forwarding risks? No? How effectively did you react to those triggers? And were you able to successfully prevent any risk from affecting the project outcomes? So what could be done to improve then for the next project? Okay. Again, you need to start your project risk aware, not risk free. Because discovery, ingenuity, ambitions, all businesses and projects involve risk. You'll never be able to eliminate uncertainties, but having a plan in place can keep small problem from growing into full-blown catastrophes. Now, and by acknowledging risk and keeping an eye out for it, you can recognize and jump on fortunate opportunities to deliver value beyond what's expected. Okay, so I think that's it for this topic.